Hello, everyone. I'm Mark L. Vincent. I'm the director of the Convene Consulting Network, and I am privileged to hold conversations with people who are very knowledgeable in their field and make themselves available to help businesses that really do want to operate with excellence and to honor God as they do. And today, I'm joined by Shelette Stewart. And Shelette is a longtime friend of Convene, an expert marketer, a lot of Fortune 50 experience, has taught at Harvard, and is available on the Convene Consulting platform. And I really am grateful that you're here, Shelette, and I want to get kind of right into it and talk about some matters around executive leadership development. And you talk about it as something that you do that's tailored. And I would like you to just kind of unpack that, if you would. Why does designing something specifically for a company even matter as opposed to purchasing it off the shelf, let's say?
Yes, well, thank you for having me, Mark. I'm
My
delighted
pleasure.
to be here. When it comes to leadership development, that's so important to begin with, but it's even more important to have a leadership development program for your company that's tailored to your company and to your leaders. And by tailored, we mean customized. And so a customized leadership development program is really just that. It's customized to your company. So the content, the curriculum, the facilitators, everything is focused on what your goals are, the competencies that you're focused on, and what your leaders are struggling with. And that's so important, Mark, because leaders really do need to be equipped with the right insights. And so it's important that the programs meet the unique needs of an organization. Every organization, every company, as you know, is different. And so this is the way to really maximize the return on investment in terms of learning for your leaders, as well as the investment in the program, because you are focused on opportunities and challenges, strategic and business imperatives for your company.
I like that because I'm aware that as companies grow and become more successful, their context becomes even more unique. They start to develop their history, they start to be articulate about their culture, they start to have expectations of how hiring is done and who the people are. My experience also is that sometimes folks, when they get to that place, start to say, well, now we need to reach out and do something a little bit more higher end. We're going to send some people off to Wharton. We're going to send them off to Harvard Business School. You've done some teaching there. So what's the difference here between, let's say, an executive course elsewhere and the executive leadership development that might be done internally?
Yes. So with a customized leadership development program for your company, again, the content is focused on your company, but in that actual program, only leaders and managers within your company will be in that cohort. So it's a wonderful experience because you have the opportunity to really divulge and discuss some confidential information and matters. You have the opportunity to focus on practical, pragmatic challenges that your leaders are facing, that your company is facing. So the whole focus is really yours. Whereas with more general executive education programs, we call them open enrollment programs. Those are programs, Mark, that virtually any leader can remit payment and join the program. And so your managers and leaders would be in a program with other leaders and managers. So the content is very general.
Okay, so if you're going general content, expanding your network, then an executive course like what Harvard offers would make some sense. If you're trying to bring a whole culture along together, getting them in front of each other, higher degree of accountability, right now kinds of learning, then the internal and tailored would have some advantage. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And to be clear, there's a role to play for each type of platform.
Sounds like it.
Ideal situation would be to have a combination of both.
Okay. So you've been doing this a while, and you've had the privilege of doing this in some significantly sized companies where the internal kind of training would be pretty robust. And I would imagine that there have been executives who lead the organization and executives who are inside that training who get it and those who don't. Like there are success stories and there are stories that aren't so successful. Can you give us some examples of that just to illustrate how this works?
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, I have been so privileged to work with Fortune 50 companies as well as some mid-sized and smaller companies. As you and I both know, Mark, a lot of times the challenges and opportunities are quite similar. They're just at different levels. And so what I found is that those companies that really get leadership development, they understand and appreciate the importance of leadership development. So they're typically ones that will prioritize talent development.
Uh-huh.
They will
Sure.
invest in talent development, and they actually will take a holistic approach where they include leadership development elements that touch every aspect and every level of their organization. So a quick example of one company, a client of mine who really gets it, is a healthcare company, and they're actually headquartered in Florida. And so a few years ago, they engaged me, and their situation was that they were dealing with what we at Harvard call a VUCA environment. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so we know healthcare
Yeah.
industry definitely is. We're dealing with a lot of that today. But their company was dealing with it too. And they said, you know, Shelette, our leaders are not equipped to deal with this, not at this level. And so I sat down with them, Mark, to understand more about their goals and their objectives and their strategic business imperatives and what their leaders were really struggling with, some of those competency areas, and developed a comprehensive, customized cohort program, a leadership development program for their C-suite leaders, for their senior leaders, and for their mid-level managers. Those were the populations that really needed the support the most. And the result was that it's been a very successful program. We're going into our fourth year, and the client has been extremely pleased. The participants have provided very positive feedback. Many of them have actually been promoted to expanded roles and areas of responsibility for the company.
Wow. I meant to ask you this earlier and I didn't. And I'm really glad I waited and to ask you until now because you were talking about this being an investment.
Mhm.
In my experience, a lot of people when they're saying, okay, we've got to pay attention to how we grow people up to take on their roles, they seem to see it like a luxury, like we can afford to do this now, uh, as opposed to we have to make this investment because we expect a return. Can you talk a little bit more about this being an investment?
Yes, I always remind my clients that companies are only as effective as their leaders. And so a lot of times that concern is around affordability and
Yes.
how that investment is in terms of how high the investment. And I'm so encouraged because now more than ever, Mark, we can offer customized leadership development programs for all budget levels. And so there are a myriad of different options, virtual, face-to-face, on-demand, micro-learning, to really meet every need of virtually every company. So if you are really serious about driving performance, productivity, and bottom line profitability for your company, then it's important to invest in your managers and your leaders, not just your current leaders, but also your future leaders. I always tell my clients to think about your bench strength. You want to have a talent pipeline in place for
Yes.
long-term sustainability.
Yeah. And with a lot that's been happening in this pandemic time, there has been this so and so's not available, so and so's out for a while, and if you don't have that bench and you don't have bench strength, you haven't done cross training, it really can leave you in a world of hurt more than it would have been otherwise.
Absolutely.
Shalette, as we move to wrap this up, I'd like to bring the faith element into this a bit more. Um, a lot of our clientele, a lot of the Convene team members and their companies, these are people of faith. They care very much about a kingdom perspective on these matters. And many of them serve in Christian nonprofits who also have a need for executive training. And so often it seems that there is a struggle to go for excellence with this. You tend to try to make do with what you've got instead of reaching out for something. But if we're not going to be dedicated to mediocrity, but to excellence, how do we think about leadership development or executive leadership development as a pursuit of excellence and as an outgrowth of our faith? How would you tie that to a Christian faith and witness?
That's such a good question. You know, I always remind my clients, I am a Christian business leader, and most of my clients are as well. So I remind them that we are God's ambassadors in the workplace and in the marketplace. We represent Him. And you alluded to this earlier, the concept and the notion of excellence. We serve an excellent God. So our leadership development plans and programs and initiatives must also exemplify excellence, not perfection, but excellence. And so we know in Proverbs 29:18, the Bible says that where there's no vision or revelation, the people perish. And in Proverbs 16:3, it says that when we commit our plans to the Lord, they will succeed. And so it's imperative that when we begin thinking and praying about leadership development efforts and initiatives, that we are led by the Holy Spirit, because at the end of the day, we are simply stewards over God's businesses. All of these enterprises truly belong to Him.
Hmm. I'm chuckling a little bit inside because steward and Stewart sound very much alike. And that was a great choice of words. You've given us a fair bit to think about here today if we are concerned with the development of others, whether we go outside, whether we bring it inside. Is there any last word that you'd have for us, Shelette, before we go?
I would encourage all of us to begin from within. I spend quite a bit of time speaking globally at different conferences and for Fortune 100 companies. And I encourage leaders to begin from within. And what I mean by that is simply pray, meditate, to contemplate about your purpose and about what God would have you to do in the situation, whether it's leadership development and having a talent pipeline or another strategic business opportunity. So begin from within.
Begin from within. Thank you very much, Shelette. I appreciate your time with us today. I want to thank all of you who are listening to this and wish you well as you lead in your enterprise. Shelette's contact information will be on the screen here as we wrap up. And until the next time, farewell.